lady, what is that you're stewing? Don't stray far from the hearth, place not while you
So
are
welcome
brewing.
everybody to the Witchlit podcast. This is a new and exciting show on the web by Witches Who Write. I'm Sheena Cundy, and my colleague here is
Wendy Steele.
Wendy
Hi.
Steele. And we are Witchlit authors, and we're very excited about our first episode, broadcasting to you from our homes in I'm in Essex, which is the sort of east coast of the UK. I live in a very remote part of the UK. And Wendy, where are you?
I'm in mid Wales, so I also live somewhere rather remote. I'm on top of a hill at the end of a valley in mid Wales, which is part of the UK, but a good few hundred miles from Sheena. So with the wonders of technology, Witches Who Write come to you today.
Yes, well, we've never actually met, Wendy and I, but I feel like I've met her because we've had lots of Skype conversations, haven't we, Wendy?
We have,
So,
yeah.
and you do come from Essex, don't you?
Yeah.
You
Originally,
used to
I
live
was
in
born in
Essex.
Romford, so yeah, I am an Essex girl originally, but I've been in Wales for 5 years now.
Okay. So what we're going to do, everybody, today is we're going to just introduce ourselves to you and give you a little bit of background on each of us. And so we thought we'd do it in like an interview situation. So I'm going to shoot a question and Wendy's going to shoot a question back at me. So Wendy, as this is a writing podcast, where did your love of writing come from?
Okay, so as quite a small child, I wanted to read before I went to school. I had an older brother, so I always wanted to read. And then, I was keen on words right from the word go. But what got me into writing was that at the age of 10, I went to the Tutankhamun exhibition in London. So I queued for 8 hours to get in to see the exhibition. And that began my love of Egypt. But I came home and wrote about it because I was so excited and I wanted to get down on paper how I'd felt about it. So that was how my love of writing began. And what about you? So where did yours start from?
Oh, okay. I've always written. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to love writing stories. I loved English. I used to be, into sort of big into. I used to love writing short stories. When I sort of evolved into poems, and I wrote lots of angst-ridden poems in my teens. And then I've always been a great lover of music. And then when I was finally in my 30s, I met my husband-to-be, who was a guitarist, and those poems turned into songs. And now we're in a band together, and I sing and I write the songs for Morrigan's Path, which is a pagan band. And I mean, that has taken years to evolve to that stage. But about 6 years ago, I took a creative writing course in a local library because I felt that I wanted to do something. I needed some more direction with my writing. I wanted to get published, basically. And ever since then, really, I suppose that gave me a bit of direction. And then in 2012, I did NaNoWriMo and got the first draft to my first novel, which was published in 2015 with Moon Books, which is my Witchlit novel.
And that's so interesting because the first I went on a course as well, and it was a creative writing course similar to you, a local council course that got me started. And then my first novel, not my first published novel, but my first novel came out of that as well. So it's a very interesting and a very similar way of going about things. So you obviously write songs as well as stories. So yeah. So which do you prefer?
I mean, I knew you were going to ask me that, because I would have told you anyway. I'd much rather write a song. Why is that? Because songs don't take as long to write, basically. Because for anybody who's watching or listening to this that is a would-be, wannabe writer, let me tell you now, it's hard work. Writing those sheer volume of words for anything that's, you know, sort of 20,000 words upwards is hard work. But, you know, I'd much rather write a song. I find writing songs much easier. It comes more naturally to me to write a song. I was talking to a friend of mine earlier, and I said that I was telling her that we had a rehearsal with the band a few weeks ago, and it's probably one of the first times, and I've thought to myself, oh, we're all getting together as a band. I need to have a new song to bring to the table. And I sat down and I thought, I'm going to write a song. Whereas normally songs for me come very inspirationally. You know, they'll come out when I'm walking the dogs and something, I just get an idea, or I just hum a tune, or I pick up my guitar, and it will happen very spontaneously. But this was a little bit more consciously written. And I wrote a song for Involk, so I wrote that in a few hours. Whereas a book, Wendy, how long does that take? You can't write a book in a few hours, can you?
No, definitely not. Can't even write a short story really in a few hours. It takes a lot longer than that.
Exactly. So can I ask you, as a magical writer and a witch, how do you incorporate your own sort of magical and spiritual practices into your work schedule, into your writing schedule? Or is that a separate thing? You know, how does that work with you?
Magic's in my life every day anyway. It's part of who I am, and being much closer to nature here, I get the opportunity to live by the wheel of the year much more closely than I ever did in Essex. Although we tried to get out loads, I mean, having my own little bit of land here, and being able to get out onto the riverbank and things like that brings me a lot closer to it. So it's always been part of my life, but it is very much part of my life now. So I wouldn't say that I bring my personal magical practice into my books, but the reason that I write about magic, and the reason that I write about women, to be perfectly honest, is that I found some books by a lady called Dion Fortune. And I just loved the way that it was about real people in London, set at a certain time in history, and yet there was magic within that. It wasn't fantasy, it was real life with real magic. And then I struggled to find other books like that. I could find books about real women particularly, and real magic. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to get and write them. So the first book I wrote was Destiny of Angels, which was at the time that I myself were traveling the paths of the Kabbalah myself. So it was very natural for me, as I was going through that learning process, to then reflect that in a story. And I'd had an idea for a story, and I used those Kabbalistic paths in that story. But the problem with that was it's quite high magic. And a lot of people, and so it was rather a bit of a niche market, if you like. And then I went and did a lot of other stuff. So I put myself on a writing course for a year to write short stories. And then when I moved to Wales, I started writing the Standing Stone books, which I was inspired by the Bronze Age settlement site on our just by our land.
Oh wow!
But lately I've been writing the Lizzie Martin series, which is what I call, it's real witch lit, in as much as it's got that idea of the female protagonist, who is a real woman, but in every way possible. She is so very real, so that we can identify with her and her struggles, and it's got to be a cracking story. First and foremost, it's got to be a good story, an engaging story, and and magic, so magic within that, but not necessarily my own personal magical practice.
Yeah, I understand that.
Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah, definitely. If I can sort of just talk about my witchlet, which is very similar in description to yours, because it's very much about real, down to earth, ordinary or extraordinary, whichever way you perceive them, people who are witches, you know, in modern day. And like you, I couldn't find, apart from Dion Fortune, who I think was writing the witchlet of her day, I couldn't really find any witchlet of the modern day about ordinary people that work their own magic, you know, in today's society. And I was talking to a friend of mine who was another coven sister of mine a few years ago, and she said to me, oh, we both love books, and she was saying, oh, I love reading about, you know, magic and that. She said, but there's no fiction of people like you and me, Sheena. And I thought, I think we'd have to write that then.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when NaNoWriMo came up, and I had no idea what NaNoWriMo was, and a friend of mine sort of said to me, why don't you go in for this, write a novel in a month? And I thought, and I just finished this creative writing course, and I thought, yeah, I need a bit of a challenge. Maybe I wonder if I could do that. And because I only found out a couple of days before the beginning of November, which is when NaNoWriMo starts, you know, you write 50,000 words in November. I didn't have any plan. I literally had to pull from the ether my idea of a modern day witch, and basically it was semi-autobiographical, you know, and at the time it kind of tied in with the fact that I was going through the perimenopause, so I was going through a magical midlife crisis and it was my remedy. It was, you know, it sort of kind of got me out of a straitjacket and got me out of the divorce courts, kept me out of the divorce courts. And, you know, I got a book out of it. So I literally, yeah, I all the magic, and my female character, Minerva, is this kind of crazy witch who reads the tarot like I do. She downs bottles of brandy like there's no tomorrow, like I used to. I don't anymore. I'm teetotal now, but I tend to sort of indulge my I remember what it's like to enjoy a nice, you know, double gin or a few bottles of brandy. So I just kind of indulge all that in my writing. But you know, all of the practices that I do in my everyday life, I kind of weave in and out of my writing, but you know, I suppose I dramatize it. Of course I do, because she's a funny character. She's a mad character. But it's the best fun that I've had on my own is writing witchlet, you know. And like you and I have often said, because we write this kind of subcategory of magical realism, this is why we want to sort of talk about it, and because the more we've met up online, and you know, we run this little group on Facebook, the Witchlet group, and there are lots of people that are writing the same kind of stuff or interested in reading that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so yeah, that's how this came about.
And also I think what you were saying about it being quite a healing process for you writing it, I think for people read, obviously because I've read it, for people reading it as well, they can identify so much with Minerva. They can see the way that she's trying to cope with things, and you know, and how, you know, and how crazy her life and in which directions it goes off and things like that. And so my question to you would be, do you ever think that you're writing to help other women?
I'd like to think that. I mean, first and foremost, I suppose, if I've from the selfish point of view, I write it for myself. I wrote it for myself to cheer myself up. when I was going through a pretty roller coaster of emotional times with the dreaded menopausal disease. So yeah, if other women can if it can cheer up other women and give them a little bit of a lift, and as you say, if they can relate to it, because I'm sure we can all relate to certain aspects of the menopause, because we've all got that kind of thing in common, being female, but being a witch as well does, of course, bring in other angles to it, because I think that as witches and women of the goddess, we have a lot of tools at our disposal, with our magical arts and our our practices, and I feel very fortunate about that, so it's but yes, I mean, at the end of the day, first and foremost, it's to entertain myself, and if it entertains anybody else, one other person feels a little bit better for reading it, then that's a bonus to me. That's a real bonus. So now, whereabouts are you in your series, Wendy? Because how many books have you got out in the Lizzie Martin series?
I've got 3 books out. I've written book 4, but I'm writing book 5 and 6 at the moment. So I chose to write 4, 5 and 6 all together. Lizzie Martin was a character, and I thought I knew her in the first book, The Naked Witch, but it wasn't until probably the 3rd one that I began to get to know her a lot more, and she's become a lot more complicated. So I wanted to make sure that the last part of this series works really, really well. So, and interestingly enough, as we ought to talk a little bit about actual writing, I think today would be really cool. So I had a problem just before Christmas. I'd started the 5th book, which is called The Able Witch, and I'd written the first almost 10,000 words, and I wasn't happy with what I'd written. So I put it aside for a little while, and then gave myself some thinking time, and decided to throw it all up in the air and start again. So
Yeah.
So we were talking about how long things take, how long writing takes. And from my perspective, I'm writing because I have a story to tell, and I have something that I want to share, and I want to share it because and it's similar to you, if it's something that will help me, then it might help someone else, and if it only helps one person, that's really cool. But also, it's got to be right. As far as I'm concerned, it's got to be right. And I wasn't happy with the way that the book started, so I threw it all up in the air. And since just before Christmas, over the Christmas period, and that, I started it again. So yeah, I'm about 10,000 into it again, and it's much better. And a load of words, decided it's pants, thrown it up in the air and started again.
Yeah. Okay, I thought about that a couple of weeks ago, but you know what? I was scratching my head for a few days, and then I thought, no, I'm going to give myself a bit of a break, and I've gone back to editing my book number 2, the sequel. And in that time, I've had a few sort of moments, light bulb moments, where I've thought, oh, that's what that character's going to do, and that's how that's going to go. And so I think sometimes you just have to step back, don't you?
Yeah.
And this constant because I'm a bit of a hard taskmaster on myself, and I tend to sort of think, oh, I must write 1,000 words every day, or I must, every day. I do try and write every day, but I don't sort of put myself under too much pressure to get a certain amount of words down, because if it's not working for a reason. And I think as long as you've got another project to carry on with, like, as you know, when you're writing in a series, there's always different stages of the job to be, you're doing the first draft of something, you're editing the last thing, you're maybe thinking about the cover for the next book. There's just so many things to always be thinking about.
Do you think that's a good thing?
I think as long as you keep your, as long as you're healthy, and you're aware of just how much energy you're sort of putting into everything, because I think sometimes we can drive ourselves down into rabbit holes, and I because for me, like as you said earlier, you write because you've got a story to tell, you write because you love the act of writing. If it stops becoming enjoyable, then what's the point? What is
absolutely.
the point? I mean, if you'd have said to me a few months ago, oh, you're going to be having, you're going to have sort of different projects all going at the same time, I'd have gone, oh my God, I don't know if I can cope with that. I think I can only cope with one thing at a time. But at the moment I'm republishing the Moon Books debut novel because I got the rights back to that at the end of last year. And the reason I got the rights back was because I want to publish a series. I'd written the sequel and I'm now writing book 3, and I want to publish a series. But if you're publishing a series and you haven't got control over that book number 1, then that's going to cause problems, because at some point I want to be able to either give that book away for free, or but I want to be able to do what I want with that book. I want creative control over it. I can change the price, I can do whatever I like, I can give it away, I can discount it, and so that's kind of where I am.
Well, I've challenged myself in the past, as you know, and I've pushed myself in the past to deadlines and various things. Yeah. I mean, we've been in Wales 5 years, and I've published 6 books since I've been here. So I've been here 5 years, living in a tent, then living inside a renovation project, which is still ongoing. So actually, for me, this is my first year that I'm not setting any big targets. I really am going with the flow. And the reason is that we've got some projects here that we really have to get done now. We have to get some groundwork in while we're still young enough and physically capable enough to get some groundwork things done. This has to be the year. So I'm not, but the nice thing about it is not having that kind of pressure, and I agree with you, it's got to be fun, is that I'm still open to writing short stories. And we're going to talk the next time we come on, aren't we, a little bit about the anthology that we're running on the Facebook group. But I also submit stories to other anthologies. I've just had one come out recently, which was a really different bit of writing, and that's why I enjoy the short stories. And I ended up writing a piece that was a kind of steampunk story, but with magic in it as well. And that was all about the Egyptian gods. I thoroughly enjoyed writing that, and yet that was just a short story. So I'm sort of allowing myself to do that. So obviously I'm still writing, I'm still promoting my books, I'm still here. I'm really glad to be part of Witchlit and everything that it stands for. I think it's a great way forward for magical writing and for women's fiction, to be honest. I think it's a really big step. I think it's a really good way for us as women writers to stand up and be counted. And another thing, we were talking about what we'd seen in other books that we'd read and the thing that was missing. And I think you and I both skimmed over this, that there might have been some other magic books out there, but they weren't particularly well written, and they didn't inspire us or hit the spot as far as we were concerned magically. And I think as witches, as women who write, I think we're in the perfect position to be doing what we're doing. So yeah, I'm looking forward to a really busy year, but no big deadlines for me, not this year. This year.
Okay. You can, but we're quite a good balance then, aren't we, with this little show? I'll be the one thundering along saying, oh, I'm going to on to the next mountain, and you'll be going, oh, I'm just going to sit down in this nice meadow and have a sniff of the daisies.
But you know what I'm like, Sheena? If I get inspired by that meadow and those daisies, that afternoon I'll sit down and I'll write 5,000 words.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm quite happy to do it like that.
Yeah.
If that,
Yeah.
you know, if that's the
Yeah.
way it
I
has to
think
be this year.
it's just however it comes, however it works, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is a brilliant time to maybe just read a little bit of our books out. So we're having a Witchanori section, everybody. If those of you that are as old as me and Wendy or older will remember on BBC years ago, pre-digital and pre the internet, there was a lovely children's program called Jackanory, and you used to get these lovely presenters or authors, and they used to sit in a big chair and read stories, didn't they? And I used to love that. I used to love Jackanory. So we're going to have a Witchanori section. So Wendy's going to read a bit of her book out. I'm going to read a bit of my book out. And I think that will take us up to our deadline, Wendy.
Yeah, definitely. Were you going to serialise yours, or were you just going to read a snippet from your book?
No, I'm just going to read serialise it. We haven't talked about this. No, I'm just going to read a snippet. I'm just going to read a snippet out. I've lost my glasses, so you can go first.
Okay,
first.
So I'm reading from The Naked
Witch. Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
So, which is the first book in the Lizzie Martin series. And in this part of the book, Lizzie and her daughter Rowan have gone to Spain, and they've been invited by Lizzie's mother-in-law, who they're staying with, her ex-mother-in-law Marsha. They've been invited to a beach party. So I thought I'd read the part of them arriving at the beach party.
Brilliant.
The house wasn't on the beach, but above it. Lizzie walked down a crooked path lit by solar lights and lampposts, across a grassy lawn and down a meandering, gently sloping slipway, before she found herself with sand between her toes. Shoes in hand, she stood looking at the ocean. No lights were visible from the house, but the almost full moon shone over the dark water. Rowan was dancing with Bryony. The huge wooden veranda jutted out from the ballroom to make an outdoor dance floor. The band played swing, rock and roll and jazz, as well as a waltz and a quick step or two. Music drifted down to her, and she swayed beneath the stars. "You're not enjoying the party?" Lizzie spun round, her shoes raised in one hand like a weapon. "Sorry, Mr. Coleman, you startled me." Lizzie turned back to the sea. The smell of expensive cologne came closer. "It's a great party, honestly, but the sea beckoned me the moment I saw it from the veranda. I'm not much of a dancer, so I thought I'd take a walk." "I don't mind, I love the sea too. We lived close to it when I was a child before we moved to London." "But you live here now?" "Part of the year. Since my father passed away, I have his business to attend to both here and in England. I'm sorry to hear you lost your father. I'm sure he would be proud of you, taking on so much responsibility when you're so young." Errol sighed and bowed his head. "I was born and brought up to it, but it doesn't always make me happy." He held out his arm. "Can I walk you to the shoreline?" I'll leave it there.
Oh, ... I love that bit. Yeah, I mean, I've read that book, and I did a review, didn't I?
You did.
That book.
Very kindly did.
I blogged it and I put it on YouTube, and I really enjoyed it. So I can't wait to get my mitts on the rest of them, because I haven't read any of the others yet. So this is an excerpt from The Madness and the Magic, which is my debut novel, which I will be bringing out again, republishing, by Ostara. Right, and this particular chapter is on it's called Catnip and Cleavages. And it's about Minerva. Basically is this crazy menopausal witch who tries to snare the local guitar playing vicar with lots of crazy spells, and This is a passage where they're having dinner together. She's managed to get him round to her place. Was it right for a vicar to look like Johnny Depp? Minerva was past caring as she tried hard not to appear too fixated on the vision before her. Drawling like a dog was not very becoming. David pushed his plate politely away from him and finished his wine. Compliments to the chef, he said. That was delicious, dabbing his mouth with his serviette. The Celtic knot edging fluttered against his dark goatee beard, and Minerva couldn't help noticing how his eyes glittered in the candlelight. Not that she minded one bit, but it struck her as odd that a man of God could look so wickedly devilish. Good, said Minerva rather abruptly. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Could you taste the saffron? Was it in the rice? He asked. It was in everything, she murmured seductively. It's got, shall we say, certain qualities. She smiled slowly over the rim of her glass at him as one dark, devilish eyebrow shot up at her. It was pure synchronicity. Oh, I see. You wouldn't have an ulterior motive, I suppose, he said. More wine, Vicar, she said. As she reached across for the bottle, feeling his eyes on her. Go on, be a devil. Fancy bringing him up, he laughed. If anyone's going to come between a witch and a vicar, I suppose it would have to be him. Well, funny you should say that, she said. In the tarot, he's a sexy beast, you know. The embodiment of love and desire. She leaned towards him. Is that allowed, Vicar? He lowered his gaze to the top of her low-cut dress. She had mastered the art of leaning forwards to display her best assets in the most alluring way, and it was working. He couldn't take his eyes off her or her assets. Encouraged by his response so far, Minerva was pleased. The evening was having the desired effect. She was having the desired effect. She sent a few silent words of praise to the goddess and stood up. Without waiting for a reply, she picked up the wine and their glasses and made her way to the sofa, stopping on the way to discreetly add another 10 drops of lang lang to the oil burner. It was a sweet and sensual aroma, full of aphrodisiac qualities, and although the evening was clearly going in the right direction, one couldn't be too presumptuous. Minerva was not leaving a stone unturned. Shall we make ourselves more comfortable? She gestured dramatically to the purple velour cushions, feeling rather proud of herself. Certainly seems like a good idea, said a smiling David as he joined her. Everything was going according to plan. The atmosphere was electrifying and alive with anticipation. It tingled and permeated the walls themselves. David thought how cave-like and primeval it was, just like Minerva. Illuminating a wooden pentacle here and a brass goddess there, the soft glow of candle flames glimmered around the room. The red candles for seduction, Minerva thought, were an obvious choice. And, with all the magical intent she could muster up, she'd carved a word with the end of her nail file along the side of each one. Candle magic had always been a favourite of hers because of its simplicity. However, one should never underestimate the power of it. Simple, according to Minerva, was usually best. She just hoped David wouldn't notice what she'd etched with her nails so carefully onto each one in large letters. SEX was not exactly a word of discretion, just a subtlety was of little use in the ways of magic. That was, if one wished it to work.
Excellent. Love it. Brilliant.
So I think, Wendy, that'll do us, don't you, for our first little Witch Lit podcast?
I think so. Should we let people know what other things that we're going to be talking about?
Yeah, I think what we're hoping to do, everybody, is we're going to interview somebody sort of fairly regularly, aren't we, Wendy? Other writers. So looking forward to that, getting other writers on and talking about them, their work, because, you know, this is all about really letting people know what Witchlit is and getting it out into the stratosphere and weaving the web. What else do we need to talk about? Do we need to finish on?
We'll be talking about other aspects of not just writing, but also about marketing ideas, strategies, thoughts about raising your profile. You know, and I know that a lot. It's one of the things, isn't it, that that they always say, oh, you shouldn't have marketing plans, you should have a strategy. That, you know, that various things should link together to become your strategy. So maybe we can talk about some of the things that could make up your marketing strategy as far as selling your books is concerned.
Yeah, definitely.
We're here to answer questions as well. So be that about magic, or be that about writing, because we've been in the craft for a while. I think, you know, we'd be happy to answer questions as well.
Yeah, definitely. And also we'd appreciate any kind of feedback on the show, on the podcast, because we want to continually strive to improve it and present it, and so that people can get the, you know, as much out of it as possible. But yeah, definitely with the marketing, it's something that I will be talking about, because as I go along, you know, I'm learning, and obviously, if anybody people haven't realized by now, we are indie authors, we are self-published authors, so we will be talking about publishing from that point of view. And I suppose, really, talking about marketing, this is one of our strategies, if you like, for our marketing, because we are doing this podcast. And so it's a great way of getting out and connecting. So do reply in the comments, everybody, if you know, if there's anything you'd like us to, a subject you'd like us to talk about next time, a theme you'd like us to cover, then feel free to, you know, to mention it, because we're open to suggestions, aren't we, Wendy?
Definitely.
And between now and next time, you can catch me. My website is www.sheenacundy.com. We'll put that in the show notes. There'll be links to our books and our, you know, or other things that we're doing in the show notes. And Wendy, where can people find you online?
So my website is wendysteele.com. You can also find me on my YouTube channel, which is Phoenix and the Dragon. So maybe we can put a link to that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And also you can find my books either via my website or via my Amazon author page. Okay.
So I think that, well, it's been great. I've really enjoyed myself anyway.
Yeah, it's been really nice chatting with you.
I hope you haven't got too cold there, Wendy, because I know you said you were very cold where you are at the moment.
Yeah, it's pretty cold. We haven't got too much snow, but it is quite cold here. There's quite a wind, so, and I'm sitting in front of the stairs, so it blows down behind me. So yeah, getting a bit chilly now. Might go for a little walk now.
Yeah. Well, I've got the dogs rapping on the door, so it's nearly time for their afternoon walk. So we hope that you've enjoyed our tittle-tattling, everybody. And I hope that you've got a bit more of an idea of what Witchlit is, what our Witchlit is. And hopefully if it's inspired you to either read or write your own Witchlit, then, you know, we've done a job, haven't we, Wendy? We've done something.
To hear from you too.
We've done something right, and we'd love to hear from you. Yeah. So yeah, until next time, it's ta-da from me.
Bye, Wales.
Okay, bye everybody.
Round and round, lady, crow, lend me your feather by the magic